Welcome to Legal Studies, and today we're going to be learning about the factors that affect the ability of Parliament to make law. So, where are we in the study design? Well, we've just started the final area of study, and the first thing we're going to learn about here is the factors affecting the ability of Parliament to make law, and you'll see there's actually 4 points here. So in our first video, we're going to focus just on this first one, the roles of the Houses of Parliament. So we're going to learn about how the roles of the Houses of Parliament affect Parliament's ability to make law. So what do you need to know? Well, first of all, you need to be able to define that dot point. So what are the roles of the different Houses of Parliament? And you've already learned a little bit about that in the last study design, in the last area of study. And then the next thing you need to do is provide strengths and weaknesses for each factor. So another way of thinking about this is how does this factor help or hinder the ability of Parliament to make law? So let's jump right into it. Thinking about the roles of the Houses of Parliament, we know that there are 2 houses, and let's look at the lower house first and think about some of their roles. One role of the lower house of Parliament is to initiate most laws. And as I said, for every role that you know about, you're going to need to think about, well, does this help or hinder Parliament when they're trying to make laws? And some of these ideas are going to do both. So, for example, the fact that the lower house initiates most laws because the government always has a majority there, we know that for the most part, that's going to help Parliament make law. If they want to, they're always guaranteed to be able to pass a law through the lower house. That's going to speed the process up, make it more efficient in a way, so that's going to help their lawmaking. On the other hand, you might talk about how that might hinder the lawmaking process in the sense that it might make it so that perhaps we end up with laws that don't truly reflect what the people want. Maybe if the government's pushing through laws without stopping for time for debate, that's going to hinder an effective and representative lawmaking process. We can also think about one of the other roles of the lower house being to potentially they can debate and reject bills. Particularly, the government can, if they want to, reject any bill in the lower house that's been introduced by the opposition or any bill that's been introduced by an independent member of Parliament. So if they want to, because the government has total control over that lower house, they can completely hinder lawmaking, totally stop it in areas that they're not interested in. So, for example, let's say an independent member wanted to propose a law legalizing cannabis usage. Well, the government could just shut that down. They could vote against it. They could prevent debate on it. And in a really big way, that's going to hinder lawmaking, right? If we think about a different scenario, if rather than the government having full control over the lower house, what happens in the very rare scenario where no one major party actually gets a majority of seats in the lower house? What happens if a bunch of parties have to cooperate together to form what we call a minority government? Well, in that case, it might, again, hinder lawmaking because you might have lots of people disagreeing. It's going to be harder to pass laws. Or on the other hand, you might argue that it's going to help lawmaking in the sense that everyone's going to have to cooperate together. They're going to have to negotiate, and perhaps that's going to end up with us producing better laws. So you might argue that's going to help lawmaking. So, as you should be seeing with this topic, the first thing you need to know is what's the role of the Houses of Parliament? And then secondly, our strengths and weaknesses. Does this role help or hinder Parliament when they're trying to make laws? So now let's finish off by looking at some of the roles of the upper house. Now we know one of the main roles of the upper house is to act as a house of review. That can help lawmaking in the sense that we're double checking to make sure the law is effective, that there's no mistakes or errors in it, that it reflects what the people want. On the other hand, it could also hinder lawmaking in the sense that one of the if the opposition has control of the upper house, for example, if there's a hostile Senate, right, that could hinder lawmaking if they just keep rejecting laws, and they could prevent any laws from coming into place potentially. We've also got our upper house. One of their roles is to examine bills in real extreme detail through the use of committees. So people can sit on committees and get the chance to look at laws in detail over a long period of time, making recommendations for change and things like that. Again, potentially helping to ensure that our laws are effective and mistake-free. But on the other hand, again, if they just decide to reject them based on their political views, that might hinder lawmaking. If the government has complete control over both the upper house and the lower house, then we might call this the rubber stamp Senate, in which case it's going to make making laws really, really easy. It's going to help lawmaking, but it might hinder debate and prevent effective lawmaking. All right, so for all of the roles of our upper and lower house, we can think about the ways in which they help or hinder Parliament when they're trying to make law. And that's at the core of this topic. You've already pretty much learned about the roles of the houses. Now we're thinking about strengths and weaknesses. I'll see you next time.